I was teaching my graduate students how to write authentic betrayal when my wife came home and told me I needed to step up for another man's child. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That Tuesday afternoon, I stood in front of 12 MFA students in my creative writing workshop at UNC Chapel Hill. We were workshopping a story about infidelity, and the writing was flat, generic, the kind of betrayal you see in bad television. Real betrayal has texture, I told them. It has specific details, the scent of unfamiliar perfume on a scarf, the unexplained key in a coat pocket, the changed password on a phone. Good writers know it's never just one thing. It's an accumulation of small, specific truths that build into something undeniable. A student in the back row, one of Lily's cohort mates, raised her hand. But Professor Hayes, how do you write it authentically if you haven't experienced it? I smiled. Behind me on the shelf sat my published novel, The Distance Between Us, a literary fiction piece about fractured relationships. I'd spent 13 years teaching people how to write emotional truth. You observe, I said. You pay attention to the details other people miss. You look for the moments when someone's words don't match their actions, when the story they're telling doesn't quite add up. I picked up the stack of student manuscripts on my desk, red pen marks covering the pages. I teach you that good writing requires honesty, emotional truth, authentic detail. Without honesty, it's just words on a page. The class nodded, taking notes. I glanced at the clock. 4:15. That's it for today. Remember, revision is about finding the truth beneath the draft. Next week, bring your second revisions. Make them real. They filed out. I gathered my papers, slid them into my worn leather satchel. The English department building was quiet at this hour, most faculty already gone for the day. My office was on the third floor. Professor William A. Hayes, Creative Writing, engraved on the wooden nameplate that had been on my door for 17 years. 17 years at this university. 17 years building a career, a reputation, a life. I had no idea it would all collapse in the next 72 hours. That night, Caroline came home with something to tell me. She'd been rehearsing it for weeks. She was waiting in our living room when I got home. Our house was in the faculty neighborhood 10 minutes from campus. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where your colleagues are your neighbors, where your professional life and personal life blur into one comfortable whole. Caroline sat on our couch, hands folded in her lap. She worked as the department administrator for English, had for 14 years, the last 6 directly under Preston Worthington, the department chair. We'd met at a faculty mixer 20 years ago, married for 18. Will, she said, we need to talk. I set my satchel down by the door, something in her voice, careful, practiced, like she'd written out what she was going to say. What's wrong? She reached into her purse, pulled out a photograph, 4 inches by 6, thermal paper slightly curled at the edges, black and white, grainy. An ultrasound image. I'm pregnant. The world tilted slightly. We'd been intimate, but infrequently. The kind of marriage that had settled into comfortable routine after 2 decades. Our daughter Lily was 22, first-year PhD student in the same English department where we both worked. We hadn't discussed having another child, hadn't discussed it in years. I didn't know what to say. How far along? 12 weeks. I stared at the image. The date stamp read 6 weeks ago. She'd known for 6 weeks and hadn't told me. Caroline, we're not exactly young. You're 43. I'm 45. Is everything okay? Have you seen a doctor? She slid a prescription bottle across the coffee table. Orange plastic, the kind that rattles when you shake it. Prenatal vitamins. Everything's fine, she said. The doctor says I'm healthy. The baby's healthy. She kept saying, our family, and this opportunity, and fresh start. But there was something in her voice, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized. The pauses were in the wrong places. The emphasis on certain words felt rehearsed. "I know this is unexpected," she continued, "but Will, I need you to step up here. We're going to be parents again. Our family is growing. You need to be there for this, for us." Step up. She used that phrase 3 times in 5 minutes. I looked at the ultrasound photo again. I tried to do the math in my head. 12 weeks pregnant meant conception in late July, early August. I'd been away at a conference in Boston for 4 days in early August, but we'd been intimate before I left, and once after I got back. "This is a lot to process," I said. "I know, but I need to know you're with me on this, Will. That you're going to step up and be there for our family." There it was again. Step up. Like she needed me to agree to something specific. Like this conversation had a predetermined outcome she was steering me toward. "Of course I'll be there," I said. "You're my wife. This is our child." But even as I said it, something felt wrong. The way she relaxed when I said those words, the way she smiled, not with joy, but with relief, like she'd successfully completed a difficult negotiation. She kept saying, "our family." But there was something in her voice, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized. I couldn't sleep that night, lay in bed next to Caroline, staring at the ceiling. The ultrasound photo was on my nightstand. In the dim light from the street, I could barely make out the grainy image. 12 weeks. Late July, early August. The Boston conference, 4 days. I remembered because Caroline had been gone that same weekend, some departmental retreat. Where had she said? I couldn't remember. She'd been vague about it. Thursday morning, I had an early class. Left the house at 7. Caroline was still asleep. I needed to grab something from her office. She'd asked me to pick up the checkbook for our department dues. She kept it in her desk drawer. We had keys to each other's offices, the kind of casual access that comes from working in the same building for years. Her office was on the 2nd floor of the English department building, smaller than mine, but she'd made it comfortable. Photos of Lily at various ages. A poster of the Lake District she'd always wanted to visit England, the desk drawer where she kept administrative files. I opened it. The checkbook was there, but next to it, tucked under a manila folder, was a red leather journal, a moleskin, the kind Caroline always bought at the campus bookstore, 5 by 8 inches. I'd seen her write in journals before, thought nothing of it. But this one was hidden, under other papers, like she didn't want anyone to see it. I shouldn't have opened it, I know that. It was her private journal, her personal thoughts. But something made me pick it up. The elastic band made a soft snapping sound as I pulled it free. The leather had that waxy texture, smooth under my fingertips. I opened it. The pages smelled like her office, coffee and that jasmine hand lotion she always used. Her handwriting in black ink covered the pages. The first entry was dated 16 months ago, August, 2 years before. "Today, P told me he's falling in love with me." P. Not W for Will, P. I turned the page. The sound of that page turning, crisp, decisive, that's the sound my marriage ended. The next entry was more explicit. Details about meetings at our secret place, the lake house, references to weekends away, late nights at the office, entries dated over 16 months, continuing right up to 3 weeks ago. 40 pages of entries, all about P. All about an affair that had been going on for over a year. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the journal. P. There was only one P in Caroline's professional life who made sense. Preston James Worthington III, department chair, her boss, my boss, the man who supervised both our careers and, as of last month, our daughter's PhD program. I stood in Caroline's office holding evidence of a 16-month affair with the man who controlled my professional life, and I couldn't breathe. The journal entry from 3 months ago, P and I spent the weekend at the lake house. No meetings, no pretending, just us. Afterward, we lay in bed and he told me Will would never understand what we have. He's right. Will lives in his books. P lives in the real world. I read that twice. Then a third time, Will lives in his books. 16 months, over a year of lying, of departmental retreats and late nights finishing reports and budget meetings that ran long. And I'd believed every word. I taught my students to look for the specific details, the accumulation of small truths, but I'd missed every single one in my own life. The journal was still in my hands when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. I snapped it closed, shoved it in my satchel along with the checkbook, and left her office. If you've ever found something you weren't supposed to find, something that changed everything you thought you knew, just type, "I found it," in the comments. You're not alone in that moment when the ground disappears. I couldn't go back to my office, couldn't face the nameplate on my door, the books on my shelves, the student papers waiting to be graded. Instead, I walked to the parking lot. Caroline drove a Honda Civic parked in her assigned spot near the English building. I had her car keys. We'd driven separately that morning, but she'd left her keys at home and taken mine. We were supposed to swap back at lunch. I stood next to her car, looked around. The parking lot was mostly empty, but a few faculty members were walking to their offices. I could see Dr. Miriam Castellano, my colleague in American literature, carrying her coffee across the quad. I opened Caroline's car door, sat in the driver's seat. The registration papers, she'd asked me to find them last week for the insurance renewal. I'd forgotten. They should be in the glove compartment. I opened it. The registration was there, but something else caught my eye. A brass key with a blue plastic tag. The kind that feels a little rough, institutional. I picked it up. Cold metal, slightly tarnished. It had that distinctive metallic smell brass has. The plastic tag read, "Faculty Retreat House, do not duplicate." The lake house. The university maintained a faculty retreat house on the lake, about 30 miles from campus. It was supposed to be for official departmental retreats, leadership planning sessions. You had to sign it out through the department administrator's office. You had to get authorization. But Caroline had a key in her personal car, not in her office where official keys would be kept. The journal entries, our secret place. The lake house. No meetings, no pretending, just us. I turned the key over in my palm. There was a serial number etched into the metal. This wasn't a borrowed key. This was a permanent key, unauthorized. I sat there in her car, holding a brass key that proved the affair wasn't just personal, it was institutional corruption, misuse of university property, violation of department policies. The key clinked against her other keys in my palm. Then I remembered something else. 2 months ago, Preston had returned my manuscript, my novel in progress, the follow-up to The Distance Between Us. I'd given it to him to read, hoping for feedback from someone who understood literary fiction. He'd returned it covered in red pen, harsh criticism, dismissive notes. This section lacks authenticity. These characters feel flat. Structural problems throughout. It had stung. Preston had always been supportive of my work before, but I'd trusted his feedback, started revisions based on his notes. I'd brought the manuscript home, left it in my study. It was sitting on my desk. Sitting in Caroline's car, holding the lake house key, I had a sudden, terrible thought. I drove home. Caroline wouldn't be there. She had department meetings all afternoon. My study was off the living room. The manuscript was exactly where I'd left it. 240 pages, white paper slightly curled at edges, covered in Preston's red pen annotations. I flipped through it slowly. The harsh comments started on page 15. Before that, his notes were constructive, but from page 15 onward, dismissive, harsh, even cruel in places. I checked the date I'd given it to him, 18 months ago. He'd kept it for 2 months before returning it, apologizing for the delay. I pulled out my phone, opened my calendar, went back 18 months. Preston had returned the manuscript 16 months ago. 16 months. The journal's first entry, 16 months ago. Every harsh comment, every dismissive note, They all started exactly when the affair began. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was sabotaging my career, systematically, using his position as department chair to undermine my work, keep me insecure, prevent me from pursuing better opportunities. I spread the manuscript pages across my desk. The red ink smelled fresh. He'd written these recently, not 2 months ago when he'd returned it. He'd kept my manuscript, waited, then added harsh notes, timed to coincide with keeping me docile. Insecure people don't make waves. I stood in my study, surrounded by evidence. The journal, the key, the manuscript, the ultrasound. And I understood finally what Caroline had meant by step up. She didn't mean be a good father to our child. She meant accept responsibility for another man's child. Stay quiet. Don't ask questions. Be grateful for the opportunity. I looked at 17 years of marriage, and I left. I packed 2 suitcases, moved into the campus guest housing, small apartments the university kept for visiting scholars. I signed a week-long lease under research purposes. Then I went back to our house. Caroline's car was in the driveway. She was home. I walked in holding the red leather journal, the lake house key in my pocket, the manuscript under my arm. She was in the kitchen making dinner. She saw me, saw the journal. Her face went white. "Will, 16 months, I said. I set the journal on the kitchen table. Let it sit there between us. Red leather against our oak table, the elastic band loose. Will, I can explain. Preston Worthington, your boss, my boss, Lily's department chair." I pulled out the lake house key, set it next to the journal. The brass clinked against the wood. 23 unauthorized weekends. I checked. Miriam showed me the access logs this afternoon. Caroline reached for her coffee cup, a nervous habit. Her hands were shaking. "How did you—" "Your office. I was getting the checkbook like you asked. The journal was right there." She closed her eyes. "You read my private journal." "Your private journal about a 16-month affair with the man who controls both our careers and our daughter's PhD program." I spread the manuscript pages across the table, red pen marks everywhere. "He started destroying my work exactly when the affair started. Did you know that? Did you two laugh about it? About how easy it was to manage me?" "Will, please." "The pregnancy." I pulled out the ultrasound photo, set it with the rest of the evidence. 12 weeks, that's late July, early August, the weekend I was in Boston, the weekend you were at the departmental retreat. She didn't deny it. That's what hurt most. She didn't even try to deny it. "It's complicated," she said finally. "No, it's not complicated. It's just betrayal." "Will, think about this rationally. Think about what this means, your career, my career. Lily just started her PhD program. She's in Preston's department. If this comes out, if you make a scene, it destroys everything for all of us." There it was. The real script, the one she'd been rehearsing. "You want me to stay quiet. I want you to be realistic, to be mature about this. These things happen, Will. Adults deal with complicated situations. We have a life here, a home, friends, Lily's education, your position, my position." "Step up," I said. "What?" "That's what you meant last night. Step up. Accept responsibility for Preston's child. Don't make waves. Be grateful you get to keep your job and your house and pretend everything's fine." She looked at me with something like pity. "Will, you're a good man, but you're not practical. You live in your books, in your stories about moral clarity and right and wrong. Real life is messy. Real life requires compromise." I thought about my students, about teaching them that good writing requires honesty, about spending 17 years telling them to look for authentic details, to write emotional truth. "I want a divorce," I said. Her pity turned to irritation. "Don't be ridiculous. Think about Lily's program. Think about your career. Preston can make your life very difficult, Will. He can deny your contract renewal. He can block your sabbatical requests. He can—" "I don't care. Yes, you do. You're upset. I understand. But when you've had time to think about this rationally, when you've considered all the implications... I've moved out, I said. I'm in the campus guest housing. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce. She actually said it. Think about Lily's program, Will. Think about your career. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I looked at her. This woman I'd spent 20 years with, who'd shared my life, raised our daughter, built a home with me. And I left. I walked out with my 2 suitcases, left the journal, the key, the manuscript, the ultrasound on the kitchen table. Evidence of 16 months of betrayal spread across our oak table like an exhibit in a trial. I didn't look back. Monday morning, I got an email from Preston's assistant. Dr. Worthington would like to see you in his office at 10 a.m. to discuss your future at the university. My future at the university, I walked across campus at 9:50. It was early September, start of fall semester. Students everywhere carrying backpacks sitting on the quad. The English department building looked the same as it had for 17 years. Red brick, ivy climbing the walls. My office on the 3rd floor. Preston's office was on the 2nd floor, corner office with windows overlooking the quad. His nameplate on the door was larger than mine. Engraved wood, gold letters, Dr. Preston James Worthington III, Department Chair. His secretary waved me in. Preston sat behind his mahogany desk. 52 years old, full professor, published scholar in Victorian literature. He'd been department chair for 6 years. Before that, we'd been friendly. Had drinks at faculty events. He'd written recommendation letters for my grants. Will. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please sit. I sat. I understand you and Caroline are having some difficulties. That's one way to put it. He folded his hands on his desk. Concerned expression. Mentor to troubled colleague. I want you to know that whatever's happening between you two, it doesn't have to affect your position here. You're a valued member of this department, 17 years, 2 published novels, excellent teaching evaluations. Thank you. That said, he pulled out a folder. I've been reviewing the department's structure, budget considerations, enrollment numbers. We may need to make some adjustments. Threat, wrapped in bureaucratic language. What kind of adjustments? Nothing immediate, but I wanted to suggest something that might be helpful for everyone involved. He pulled out a document. A research leave, paid, of course, 6 months. You could focus on your writing, get some distance from the situation, clear your head. I looked at the document, 6 months paid leave, starting immediately, which meant 6 months away from campus, away from students, away from colleagues who might notice something was wrong. And if I don't take the leave, then we continue as normal. But Will, I have to be honest with you. Departmental harmony is important. If there's conflict, if there are distractions, it affects everyone. Students notice, colleagues notice. It creates an uncomfortable environment. He was threatening me, politely, academically. But it was a threat. Let me think about it, I said. I stood to leave. As I did, I glanced at his bookshelf behind the desk. Faculty photos and frames, conference presentations, awards. And there, behind a glass cabinet door, tucked behind a faculty group photo, the same ultrasound image Caroline had shown me. 4 by 6 inches, black and white thermal paper, identical to the one sitting in my apartment. He kept it in his office, behind glass where students and faculty could see if they looked, where only someone sitting in his chair could really see it properly. He was proud of it, or he wanted me to find it, wanted me to know. I looked at Preston. He was watching me, waiting to see if I'd noticed. I'll let you know about the leave, I said. I walked out. My hands were shaking. He kept a copy of the ultrasound in his office like a trophy. I went straight to Miriam Castellano's office. Miriam was 59, senior professor of American literature. We'd been colleagues for 15 years, friends for most of that time. She was the kind of person who noticed things other people missed. I knocked on her door. She looked up from her computer. Will, come in. Close the door. I did. Sat down in her worn armchair. Her office was comfortable, lived in, books everywhere, a photo of her late husband on her desk. "You look terrible," she said. "Preston just offered me a research leave." "Let me guess. 6 months, paid, strongly encouraged. How did you..." She pulled a blue vinyl binder from her bookshelf, 3-ring binder, 2 inches thick. The cover squeaked when she opened it. It smelled like old paper and photocopy toner. "Department meeting minutes, 2023 through 2025. She flipped through the pages. They made a rustling sound, hole-punched and organized with tabs. "I've been the secretary for these meetings for 8 years. I keep meticulous records." She stopped at a page, highlighted in yellow. "Budget line item, faculty, retreat, and strategic planning. Look at the numbers." I looked. For the past 5 years, the budget for faculty retreats had been consistent, $3,000 to $5,000 per year. Then, 16 months ago, it jumped. $15,000, $20,000, $18,000. What were they spending it on? Miriam pulled out another document. "Lake House access logs. I requested them last week. Told the administration I was doing a departmental efficiency review." She slid the paper across her desk. 23 weekend retreats over 16 months. All signed out by Caroline as department administrator, all authorized by Preston as department chair. All while I was away on research trips. "Miriam, I've suspected something for months, Will. The way they looked at each other in meetings, the late night emails, Caroline's car in the parking lot at 10 p.m. when Preston's was the only other one there." She looked at me with sad eyes. I didn't want to say anything without proof, and honestly, I hoped I was wrong. She slid a second document across her desk. 23 weekends, all unauthorized, all while you were away on research trips. I stared at the numbers, the dates, the systematic pattern of deception. They used university property for personal use. They misappropriated departmental funds. Miriam's voice was quiet. "That's not just infidelity, Will. That's institutional misconduct. Title IX territory." "Caroline's pregnant," I said. 12 weeks. Preston's the father." Miriam closed her eyes. "Oh, Will." "They expect me to stay quiet, to accept it, to step up and raise his child so no one finds out." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. If I file a complaint, it becomes public. It affects the department, the students. Lily just started her PhD program here. She's one of Preston's advisees." "And if you stay quiet, then they win. Preston keeps his position. Caroline keeps hers. I keep mine. We all pretend everything's fine while I raise another man's child, and Preston continues to control my career." Miriam was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You know what I tell my students when we read Hawthorne? The Scarlet Letter wasn't Hester's punishment. It was her truth. And truth, even when it costs everything, is better than living a lie." She pushed the binder toward me. "Document everything. I'll help you. This isn't just about your marriage anymore. This is about institutional integrity." I looked at the blue binder. Evidence of systematic corruption, sitting in vinyl and paper. "Thank you," I said. "One more thing." Miriam pulled out her phone, showed me an email. "I'm up for tenure this semester. Final review. Preston controls that process. If you file a complaint against him, he'll know I helped you. He could block my tenure." "Miriam, I'm telling you this so you know the cost, not so you won't do it." She smiled. "I've been teaching American literature for 30 years. I tell students about civil disobedience, about standing up to corrupt systems, about choosing integrity over comfort. I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't practice it." I left her office with the meeting minutes binder under my arm. Documentary evidence of 16 months of systematic corruption. But I also left knowing that if I used it, I'd cost Miriam her tenure. I'd affect every student in the department. I'd destroy Lily's PhD program before it even started. The cost of truth was getting higher every day. That afternoon, my phone rang. "Lily, I'd been avoiding her calls for 3 days, ever since I moved out. I knew Caroline would have told her some version of events. Her version. Dad? Hi, sweetheart. What the hell's going on? Mom says you moved out. She says you're leaving us when she needs you most. She's pregnant, Dad, and you just left? Caroline had gotten to her first. Of course she had. Lily, it's complicated. No, it's not complicated. Mom is pregnant. She needs support. We're family. How could you just walk away? I stood in my campus guest housing apartment, small, temporary, not home. I looked down at my left hand. The platinum wedding band was still there, brushed finish, 6 millimeters wide, engraved inside J&V forever, 6.14-2006. 18 years. I'd worn it every day for 18 years. Your mother and I are having some difficulties. I know you're having difficulties. Every marriage has difficulties. That's not a reason to abandon her when she's pregnant. I'm not abandoning. Then what are you doing? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're running away from responsibility. Mom says you're refusing to step up, that you're making this about you when it should be about the baby. Step up. Caroline had used those exact words. Lily, there are things you don't understand, then explain them to me. Because right now I'm watching my father walk away from his pregnant wife, and I don't understand how the man who taught me about integrity and doing the right thing could do this. My 22-year-old daughter, first-year PhD student in English literature. She'd followed me into this profession. We'd read books together since she was 6, had debates about literature over dinner. She'd looked up to me her whole life, and now she was looking at me with disappointment and confusion, and I couldn't tell her why, because the truth would hurt her more than my silence hurt me. I love you, Lily. This isn't about abandoning anyone. It's about you being selfish. Mom says you've been distant for months, that you've been wrapped up in your writing, in your career, and you haven't been present. And now, when she needs you most, you're running away. Caroline's narrative, carefully constructed, painting me as the neglectful husband, the absent partner, making herself the victim. That's not, I have to go, I have class. Her voice was cold, formal. When you're ready to act like an adult, call me. She hung up. I stood there holding my phone, looking at my wedding band. Lily said, Mom says you're leaving us when she needs you most. Dad, how could you? I couldn't answer. Not yet. That night, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Will, it's your father. Thomas Hayes, 72 years old, retired high school English teacher. We hadn't spoken in 6 months. Hadn't had a real conversation in years. Dad, hi. Your Aunt Susan called, told me what's happening with Caroline. Of course. Family gossip traveled fast, even when you didn't want it to. I'd rather not talk about it. I know, but I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you 37 years ago. I sat down on the edge of my temporary bed. Small apartment, not home. What? Your mother and the department head, high school English department, 1987. The world stopped. What are you talking about? Same thing that's happening to you. Affair. I found out. She was pregnant, not mine. I couldn't breathe. You never told me. You never said anything. You just... I left, took a teaching job 3 states away, filed for divorce from a distance, left you behind with your mother because I couldn't look at you without seeing my failure. I was 13 when my father left, thought it was my fault, thought I'd done something wrong, spent years trying to understand why he'd abandoned us. I handled it wrong, Will. I ran. I left you confused and hurt because I was too much of a coward to tell you the truth, too ashamed to face it. His voice cracked. When your aunt told me what happened, that Caroline's pregnant, that it's not yours, I couldn't... Will, you're protecting Lily by telling the truth. Even when it's hard, you're not running away, you're standing your ground. I looked at my published novel on the temporary bookshelf. The Distance Between Us, dedicated to Caroline and Lily. I'd been thinking about removing the dedication page, cutting it out, pretending those words had never been written. I was wrong to leave you behind, son. Don't do what I did. Don't run. Don't hide. Fight for the truth. Fight for your dignity. And don't let them make you ashamed of doing the right thing. Silence on the line. Then, I'm proud of you. It took me 37 years to say it, but I'm proud of you. You're being the man I couldn't be. I was 45 years old, and for the first time in my life, my father told me he was proud of me. It came 37 years too late, and exactly when I needed it most. Thanks, Dad. You'll get through this, and when you do, you'll know you did it the right way. Not the easy way, the right way. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking about patterns, about fathers and sons, about betrayal passed down through generations, about breaking cycles. If you were Will, would you? Option A, take Preston's offer, stay quiet, protect your daughter's PhD program and your career. Type protect. Or option B, file the complaint, expose the corruption, risk losing everything you built for 17 years? Type expose. What would you do? Because there's no easy answer here. Both choices have real costs. I see both in the comments, and you're both right. That's what made this so hard. But I'll tell you what I chose, and why. Thursday morning, my attorney called. David Morrison, my older brother, labor attorney. He'd been handling my divorce filing. Will, I got something from the university IT department per your discovery request. What is it? Email thread, university servers, between Caroline and Preston, 35 pages. He sent it as a PDF. I opened it on my laptop. The pages were still warm from the printer when I printed them out myself. White paper, standard office stock. I punched holes in them for a binder. Some passages highlighted in yellow. Yellow highlighter has a waxy texture when you run your thumb across it. The paper smelled like toner, fresh, recent. Each page had timestamps, sender and recipient information, all on university servers, all permanent record, all discoverable. I started reading. Page 1, Caroline to Preston, 14 months ago. Looking forward to this weekend. The lake house is perfect this time of year. Page 4, Preston to Caroline. Will's manuscript is mediocre at best. I'll tell him it needs major revisions. Should keep him distracted and insecure for a while. Insecure people don't make waves. My manuscript, the novel I'd spent 3 years writing, he deliberately sabotaged it to keep me distracted and insecure. Page 7, Caroline to Preston. W asked about the lake house key. I told him it was for emergency departmental use. He believed me. W Will, they abbreviated my name in their emails, like I wasn't worth the extra letters. Page 12, Caroline to Preston. W is so naive, he actually believed the key was for emergency department use. He teaches his students to question everything except his own life. I stared at that line. Read it 3 times. He teaches his students to question everything except his own life. They laughed about me in writing, professional emails on university servers, mocking the fact that I taught critical thinking but couldn't apply it to my own marriage. Page 16, Preston to Caroline. Annual review coming up. I'll keep his ratings just high enough to avoid questions, low enough to keep him insecure. Insecure people don't make waves. Systematic sabotage, documented in writing. Page 23, Caroline to Preston. W said he's going to Boston for that conference, 4 days. We could use the time. The Boston conference, the weekend she got pregnant. They'd planned it, coordinated their schedules, used my absence to arrange their affair. Page 31, Preston to Caroline. If he finds out, we manage him. Worst case, I offer him a research leave. He'll take it. He's too afraid of losing his position to fight. Page 35, Caroline to Preston, 3 weeks ago. I'm going to tell him about the pregnancy tonight. We'll frame it as his responsibility. W is too guilt-ridden and duty-bound to say no. He'll step up. He always does. They'd planned it, rehearsed it. Caroline's script about stepping up and our family, they'd written it together. They'd predicted my response. They'd banked on my sense of duty, my fear of conflict, my 17 years of investing in this institution. They thought they knew me. And the worst part? They'd been right. I'd almost done exactly what they'd planned. Almost accepted the pregnancy, stayed quiet, raised Preston's child, preserved the institution. Almost, but I hadn't. And now I had 35 pages of documented evidence proving systematic corruption, professional misconduct, and institutional abuse. The irony would have been funny if it didn't make me want to throw up. They wrote that on university servers about me, the man Caroline married, the colleague Preston had drinks with at faculty events. They wrote about managing me like I was a problem to be solved, a complication to be handled. I sat in my guest housing apartment at midnight. Student papers spread across my desk, ungraded. The email printout next to them, the blue binder of meeting minutes, the red journal from Caroline's office, evidence, 35 pages of emails, 23 unauthorized lake house visits, 16 months of journal entries, a pattern of professional sabotage, misappropriation of university funds. And I thought about what I taught my students. I spent 15 years teaching creative writing, teaching them to find truth in fiction, to write with honesty, to look for authentic detail, to question narratives, to examine what people say versus what they do. Real betrayal has specific details, I'd told them. Good writers know, without honesty, it's just words on a page. I'd taught them that good writing requires honesty. I should have required it in my marriage. I looked at the student papers on my desk, red pen annotations, constructive criticism about making their work more authentic, more truthful. I thought about Preston's red pen on my manuscript. This section lacks authenticity. Deliberate sabotage disguised as mentorship. I thought about Caroline's words. These things happen. Adults deal with complicated situations. Real life requires compromise. They wanted me to see it as a complicated situation, but some stories don't have morally ambiguous endings. They just have villains. I picked up my phone, called Dean Margaret Oakes's office, left a message requesting a meeting, formal Title IX complaint, institutional misconduct, supporting documentation available. I taught my students that good writing requires honesty. I should have required it in my marriage. I picked up the phone. There was no going back after this. Dean Margaret Oakes was 61 years old, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. She'd been at UNC for 23 years, worked her way up from assistant professor to dean. She had a reputation for taking Title IX complaints seriously. Her office was in the administration building 2 floors above the English department. Large windows overlooking campus. Bookshelves filled with policy manuals and legal texts. I sat across from her desk. My attorney, David, was on speakerphone. The university's general counsel, Rachel Kim, sat to my right. On Dean Oakes's desk, the red leather journal, the email printout, the meeting minutes binder, the lake house access logs, all 35 pages of systematic evidence. Professor Hayes, Dean Oakes said, walk me through this. I did. 16 months of affair, pregnancy. Preston's attempts to pressure me into silence with offers of research leave. Caroline's manipulation. The ultrasound photo in Preston's office proving both knew about the pregnancy, the misuse of university property and departmental funds. Rachel Kim took notes, flipped through the email printout. Dean Oakes read the journal entries, read the emails, looked at the budget documents. This is extensive, she said finally, and concerning. These emails constitute potential evidence of abuse of supervisory authority, misuse of university resources, and creation of hostile work environment. She looked at me. Professor Hayes, you understand that filing a formal Title IX complaint makes this public record. It will affect your department, your colleagues, students, And your daughter, she's a first-year PhD student in English, correct? Yes. Under Dr. Worthington's supervision? Yes. This investigation will affect her program, the department's reputation, rankings, funding, faculty morale. I understand. And you're prepared for that? I thought about Lily, about her PhD program, about the department I'd worked in for 17 years, about Miriam's tenure review, about every student who'd chosen UNC English because of its reputation. They wrote about managing me, I said quietly. In university emails, they called me naive. They planned to use my sense of duty against me. They sabotaged my work to keep me insecure. They misappropriated funds for personal use. And they expected me to stay quiet because they knew the cost of speaking up. I looked at Dean Oakes. I was prepared to pay that cost, to stay silent, to protect everyone. But then I realized that's exactly what they were counting on. That's how corruption continues. Because good people are afraid to speak up. Dean Oakes closed the folder. I'll launch a full investigation. Dr. Worthington will be notified today. You should expect retaliation, Professor Hayes. I'll do everything I can to prevent it, but department chairs have considerable latitude in day-to-day operations. I know. This will be difficult for everyone involved. The truth usually is. Dean Oakes looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, You're a braver man than most, Professor Hayes, and for what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. I left her office knowing that by the end of the day, Preston would know, Caroline would know, the department would know, Lily would know, and there was no going back. Dean Oakes closed the folder. This will be public record. It will affect your daughter's program, your career. Are you prepared for that? I was. Finally, I was. The investigation moved quickly. Dean Oakes interviewed faculty, subpoenaed complete email records, reviewed 6 years of departmental budgets, interviewed the university's property management about lake house procedures. Within a week, the entire English department knew something was happening. Hushed conversations in hallways, closed-door meetings, faculty avoiding eye contact. Lily stopped answering my calls completely. 10 days after I filed the complaint, I was walking across campus when I heard voices in the parking lot. Late afternoon, most faculty gone for the day. Caroline's voice, angry. Just let me handle Will and the investigation. He'll back down. He always backs down. And Preston's voice. He filed a goddamn Title IX complaint, Caroline, with evidence, emails, budget records, your journal. This isn't something we can handle. Then we say it was consensual. Between adults, none of the university's business. We used university property. We're in a supervisor-subordinate relationship. It is their business. I was standing behind a row of cars. Couldn't see them, but I could hear everything. This is your fault, Caroline said. If you hadn't kept that ultrasound in your office. My fault? You're the one who left your journal where he could find it. You're the one who told him to step up like he was too stupid to figure it out. I was trying to manage the situation. You managed it badly, and now we're both screwed. My career is over. The board is going to force me out, and they're transferring you to the registrar's office. Different building, different department, no contact with students. Silence. Then Caroline's voice, smaller. What about the baby? What about it? Preston, we have to figure out our own mess, Caroline, separately. This relationship, it's done. It cost us both too much. I heard car doors open, engines start. They left separately. I stood in the parking lot, hidden behind cars, listening to their relationship implode under the weight of consequences. And then I heard another voice. Dad? I turned. Lily was standing 10 feet away. She'd heard everything. My 22-year-old daughter, first-year PhD student, carrying a backpack full of books. She'd been walking to her car, had overheard the same conversation I had. Lily, how long? Her voice was shaking. How long have you known? 3 weeks, since I found your mother's journal. And you didn't tell me. You let me think you were the one abandoning us. You let me be angry at you. I was trying to protect you. By lying. By not forcing you to choose between your parents before you were ready. She stared at me, tears running down her face. Mom told me you were being selfish, that you couldn't handle her pregnancy, that you were making it about you. Her voice broke. She lied to me, Dad, for 3 weeks. While I was angry at you, while I wasn't talking to you, she lied. I wanted to hold her, to tell her it was okay, but I stayed where I was. I'm sorry, I said. I should have told you. But Lily, the truth was always going to hurt. There was no good way to do this. I need to see it, all of it. No more protecting me. We sat in my car. I showed her everything. The journal, the emails, the budget documents, the access logs. She read it all. Every page, every entry, every mocking email about her naive father who lived in his books. When she finished, she looked at me. Mom said I had to choose between you and her, between staying in the program or following you. You don't have to. I'm choosing you. She pulled out her phone, showed me an email she'd drafted. I'm withdrawing from UNC. I've been accepted to University of Virginia's PhD program. They've offered me a spot starting spring semester. Grace Whitmore is transferring too. We talked about it yesterday. Grace, one of Lily's cohort mates, one of the students who'd been in my creative writing workshop that Tuesday afternoon 3 weeks ago. Lily, you don't have to transfer. This program is built on corruption, Dad. Preston sabotaged your career. Mom enabled it. They used university resources for personal gain, and they expected you to stay quiet because speaking up would cost too much. She handed me something. My published novel, The Distance Between Us. The one with the dedication to Caroline and Lily, my reasons for everything. The dedication was true when you wrote it, Lily said. It's not your fault the recipients changed. Keep it. Reminder that you meant what you wrote. Mom's the one who broke the promise. I looked at the email printout in her hands, at page 12, with its highlighted yellow section. Caroline to Preston, W is so naive he actually believed the key was for emergency department use. My daughter was 19 when she started undergrad, 22 now, first-year PhD student, and she was reading her mother's words mocking her father, making the hardest decision of her young academic life. You don't have to do this, I said. You can stay here, finish your program. No. Her voice was steady now, clear. You told the truth even when it hurt. You chose integrity over career security. You protected me by filing the complaint, not by hiding it. She wiped her tears. I'm following you, not because you're perfect, because you were honest. Lily looked at the evidence spread between us, then at me. No more protecting me. I need to see everything. She was 22 years old and choosing between her parents, and I hated that I couldn't protect her from this. But I was so grateful she chose reality over comfortable lies. The university board met 2 weeks later. 15 members, closed session, but the findings were made public afterward. Dr. Preston James Worthington III was removed as department chair, effective immediately, placed on administrative leave pending further review. The board found evidence of multiple policy violations: abuse of supervisory authority, misuse of university property, misappropriation of departmental funds, and creation of hostile work environment. He wouldn't be fired. Tenured full professors are nearly impossible to remove entirely, but his career as an administrator was over. No more department chair, no more dean candidacy. He'd return to teaching after his leave if he chose to. But his reputation was destroyed. Caroline was transferred to the registrar's office. Different building, different department, no contact with English students or faculty. Her career stalled. The professional network she'd built over 14 years, gone. Their relationship fell apart within weeks. Mutual blame, recriminations. The pregnancy that was supposed to bind them together became the thing that destroyed them. 6 months later, I got a text from Caroline's attorney. The adoption was finalized. Professional couple in Raleigh, both university administrators at NC State. Unable to have children of their own, the baby would have a stable, loving home. 2 parents who chose him, not who were forced together by scandal. That was the last time Caroline and I communicated. The divorce was finalized 2 months after that. Division of assets. Custody arrangements for occasional holidays with Lily, though she was an adult and made her own choices. No alimony. Caroline had her own career, her own income. I kept the house. Caroline didn't want it. Too many memories, she said. Too much evidence of failure. I didn't want it either, but I kept it long enough to sell it properly, to divide the proceeds, to close that chapter. In November, I got an offer. Hollins University in Virginia. Small liberal arts college with a prestigious creative writing program, MFA and undergraduate. Smaller classes, 15 students per workshop instead of 25. Lower salary than UNC, but enough and honest. No corruption, no hidden agendas, no ex-wife and her lover controlling my career. I accepted. Lily transferred to University of Virginia's PhD program in January. 1 hour from Hollins. We could have dinner once a week, coffee on weekends. The father-daughter relationship we'd always had, rebuilt on truth instead of comfortable illusions. My father, Thomas Hayes, visited in February, 72 years old, driving from Georgia to Virginia to see my new office. Smaller than UNC, he said, looking around. Better, I said. He understood. We had dinner that night, talked about his 1987 betrayal, about my mother's affair, about the choices he made, the regrets he carried, about breaking cycles of abandonment and shame. I'm sorry I left you behind, son, he said. I'm sorry it took me 37 years to tell you why. I forgive you, I said, and I'm grateful you told me when I needed to hear it most. 3 generations of men, all learning, finally, what it means to stay, to fight for truth instead of running from it, to choose integrity even when it costs everything. Will and Lily redefined what family means, not who you're born to, but who shows up, who tells you the truth even when it hurts, who chooses integrity over comfort. If you've built your own chosen family, the people who showed up when others walked away, tell me about them in the comments. I want to hear those stories. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about honesty and courage and what we owe the people we love, subscribe. I tell stories about people who choose self-respect over comfort, people who walk away from what's easy to walk toward what's right. I'll see you in the next one. Spring semester at Hollins. My office was on the 2nd floor of the Humanities building, smaller than my UNC office, window overlooking the Virginia mountains instead of Carolina pines. Different view, but mine. Earned honestly. I was setting up my desk when someone knocked on the doorframe. Lily, holding 2 cups of coffee from the campus cafe, our ritual. Hey Dad, thought you might need caffeine. Always. I took the cup. How's UVA treating you? Good, really good. My advisor is brilliant. The cohort is supportive. Grace and I are sharing an apartment. She sat in the chair across from my desk. It's different from UNC, smaller program, but real, you know? I know. She looked around my office. You haven't hung your nameplate yet. The wooden nameplate was sitting on my desk. Walnut finish, 10 inches by 3, gold letters, Professor William A. Hayes, Creative Writing. The same nameplate that had been on my door at UNC for 17 years. I will, I said, just taking my time. May I? She picked it up, ran her finger over the gold letters. The varnished wood was smooth, perfect. Same name, Dad. Different place. Better place. Much better place. She handed it back to me. Grandpa Thomas is visiting next week, right? Tuesday. He wants to see the office, meet some faculty, maybe sit in on one of my workshops. 3 generations of English teachers. Lily smiled. We're a stubborn bunch. Stubborn and honest. The best combination. I looked at my bookshelf, my published novel, The Distance Between Us, sat there with a new dedication page I'd inserted. I'd removed the original dedication to Caroline and Lily, replaced it with new words. To Lily for choosing truth, and to Thomas for finally telling yours. Student manuscripts were stacked on my desk, my red pen next to them. I'd been writing encouraging notes in the margins, constructive feedback about making their work more authentic, more truthful. Same red pen Preston had used to sabotage my manuscript, but different purpose now, redemption for a tool that had been weaponized. Lily noticed. You're using red pen again. It's just a pen. The person holding it determines whether it helps or hurts. She smiled. That's very literary professor of you. Occupational hazard. We drank our coffee. Comfortable silence. The kind of silence that comes from surviving something together. From choosing truth and living with the consequences and discovering that the consequences, while painful, were worth it. Later, after Lily left, I took the nameplate, walked out to the hallway, found the screw holes on my office door frame. The nameplate had been with me for 17 years at UNC, through 2 published novels, through hundreds of students, through a marriage that ended and a career that survived. Same nameplate. Different door. I screwed it into place. The screws made that same tiny squeaking sound they always had. The wood had the same smell of polish and linseed oil, but everything else was different. Through my office window, I could see the Virginia mountains, Blue Ridge Range in the distance, smaller view than Chapel Hill's sweeping quads and brick buildings, but honest, clean, mine. I went back to my desk, picked up the student manuscripts, started writing feedback in red pen. Real Betrayal has specific details. I told my students that Tuesday afternoon 3 months ago. Good writers know, without honesty, it's just words on a page. I still teach my students that writing requires honesty, that authentic storytelling demands truth, even when truth is uncomfortable, that the best writing comes from examining the details others miss, from questioning narratives, from refusing to accept convenient lies. But now I know something else. Honesty isn't just for writing, it's for living. And sometimes the most important story you tell isn't on the page. It's the one you live, the one where you choose self-respect over comfort, where you walk away from institutions that demand your silence, where you protect your daughter not by hiding the truth, but by showing her what integrity costs and proving it's worth the price. They wanted me to see it as a complicated situation. They told me adults compromise, that real life is messy, that truth is less important than preservation. But they were wrong. Some stories don't have morally ambiguous endings. They just have villains and survivors. And sometimes surviving means learning that you can lose everything you built and still have everything that matters. I taught my students that good writing requires honesty. Now I know, so does living, and I'm finally doing both.